on China and 20% on the European Union. Trading partners are expected to respond with countermeasures of their own that could lead to dramatically higher prices for everything.
Effective at midnight, we will impose a 25% tariff on all foreign-made automobiles.
Meanwhile, a separate set of tariffs on auto imports that Trump announced last week will take effect starting on April 3rd. Economists have warned that tariffs could slow the global economy, raise the risk of recession, and increase living costs for the average U.S. family by thousands of dollars.
April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed.
President Trump dropped a bomb today on the global economy. He announced 10% tariffs on all countries and special, much higher tariffs on specific countries. Stock markets are falling on this news, which came late in the afternoon after American markets closed. He's keeping a campaign promise. He talked about a 10%, what he called universal tariff on all imports. And he's hitting most countries with that, but he's also singled out about 60 other countries for specific, very high tariffs. For example, he's putting what he calls a reciprocal tariff of 34% on China. And that is meant to make up.
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. You know what we'll talk about today? Trump's tariffs. He's targeted everyone, friends and foes, even islands where no one lives. There's a lot of conversation around this move, a lot of analysis and projections. Tonight, we'll try to break it down for you. What exactly has Donald Trump done? What are the 10 things that you should know about his tariff moves? How does it impact India? How is New Delhi reacting? What about the United States? How will this play out for American consumers and businesses? And their allies in Europe, will they retaliate? We can tell you that China will. It's been the worst hit with more than 60% tariffs. We'll discuss what this means for China's struggling economy. And is this the end of multilateral trade? So a lot of ground to cover here. Also in focus, the Philippines dares China with its game-changer F-16 jets. In West Asia, it's back to square one with Israel beginning an offensive to split Gaza. In Washington, is Elon Musk leaving Doge to steady his businesses? And what's the record 25-hour speech that is making headlines? We'll tell you how it's an endurance test. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Hungary says it will quit the International Criminal Court. The decision comes as Prime Minister Viktor Orban hosts his Israeli counterpart. The tribunal has accused Benjamin Netanyahu of war crimes in Gaza as he faces an ICC arrest warrant. But Budapest says it will not act against Netanyahu, who is on his first trip to Europe since 2023. Prime Minister Narendra Modi meets Thailand's Prime Minister in Bangkok. The two leaders agree to upgrade their relationship to a strategic partnership. The Indian Prime Minister is in Thailand to attend the BIMSTEC summit. Tomorrow he will leave for Sri Lanka. It will be his first trip there since Colombo got a new president. Ugandan president arrives in South Sudan. It comes just days after South Sudan arrested its first vice president, triggering fears of a return to civil war. Uganda has long been involved in South Sudan. Last month, it sent troops to support the president of the world's youngest nation. Nepal's capital Kathmandu blanketed in heavy smog as wildfires rage across the country. The air pollution levels are among the worst in the world. The Himalayan nation sees a spate of wildfires annually, usually beginning in March, but their number and intensity have worsened in recent years. And the UK's charity watchdog opens a probe into Sentebale. It's the African organization co-founded by Prince Harry, who stepped down as its patron after a boardroom battle. The charity's chairperson has accused the British prince of bullying and cover-up. Harry has called these allegations blatant lies.
They charge us, we charge them less. So how can anybody be upset?
We're going to fight these tariffs.
This is not the act of a friend.
The global economy will massively suffer.
Tariffs, one of the many things you learnt in school. You may remember reading about it in your textbook. Some of you may have thought, why bother? It's not like I'll ever use it in life. Well, now we know how wrong we were. Tariffs will probably be the word of the year, and if Donald Trump has his way, maybe even the word of the decade. Yesterday was his big Liberation Tariff Day. President Trump held a special event at the White House. The stage was decked in American flags, and Trump walked out to a big round of applause and music. Then came the big speech. Trump spoke for almost 1 hour. He brought in charts. He made false accusations at countries, and he promised liberation for Americans.
China. For decades, our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered by nations near and far, both friend and foe alike. They watched in anguish as foreign leaders have stolen our jobs, foreign cheaters have ransacked our factories, and foreign scavengers have torn apart our once beautiful American dream. Our country and its taxpayers have been ripped off for more than 50 years, but it is not going to happen anymore. It's not going to happen.
After the speech, Trump signed an executive order. With one stroke of the pen, he ripped up the global trading order. He effectively started a global trade war, and at the center of it are reciprocal tariffs. We have explained this before. These are basically tit-for-tat tariffs. You impose 10%, I will impose 10%. That is the definition of reciprocal tariffs. But Trump's version is a bit different. Tonight we'll tell you about this tariff regime. In fact, we've split it into 10 parts. The 10 things that you must know about this move. Number one, Trump has not gone for full reciprocity, which is a deviation from his original plan. Initially, he wanted to go beyond reciprocity. He said he won't just look at tariff rates, he will also look at non-tariff barriers like subsidies or tax cuts. That approach would have been even more devastating, but as it turned out, Trump did not go that way. The current rates are less than reciprocal. He has called it kind tariffs.
I call this kind reciprocal. This is not full reciprocal. This is kind reciprocal. But what we do is we cut it in half, we charge them.
So what are these kind rates? That's our second highlight. Trump has unveiled a 10% baseline tariff. This will apply to all goods entering the United States, basically a blanket tariff. And this will come into effect on Saturday. For some countries, this is also the only rate, like the United Kingdom, Brazil, Singapore, Australia, the United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia. Trump says these countries charge American goods 10% tariff, so the reciprocal rate is also 10%, meaning only the baseline applies to these countries, the ones that I just mentioned. Which brings us to the third highlight. Around 60 countries face customized tariff rates. These are over and above the 10%. I'll quickly go through some of them. The White House says China's tariffs are 67%. The reciprocal rate is 34%. Remember, China already faces 25% US tariffs, so the total comes to over 50%. The White House claims that Europe imposes 39% tariffs, and the reciprocal is 20%. For Japan, it is 24%. For India, it is 27%. For Israel, 17%. For Pakistan, 30%. For South Africa, 31%. South Korea, 26%. And Taiwan, 32%. These are the tariffs on major countries. They will be imposed on the 9th of April. That's next Wednesday. Trump channeled his reality TV persona while announcing them. With a chart in hand, he rattled out the rates.
China, 67%. European Union, 39%. Vietnam, 90%. Taiwan, 64%. We're going to charge them 32%. Japan, 46%. They would charge us 46%. India, very, very tough. Very, very tough. They charge us 52%. Switzerland, 61% to 31%. Indonesia, Malaysia, Cambodia. Oh, look at Cambodia, 97%. United Kingdom, 10%. South Africa, 60%, 30%.
Next is highlight number 4. Trump announced a special rate for foreign automobiles, a 25% tariff. Say you're importing a car made in Germany or China or France. Then the importers must pay 25% tariff. This applies to cars made anywhere in the world. And this tariff came into effect this morning. I know we've thrown a lot of numbers at you, but how did Trump arrive at these numbers? Well, that is highlight number 5. The White House is talking about a very complicated formula, but some mathematicians have figured it out. First, they took a country's trade surplus with America. Then they divided it by their exports to America, and the result was then halved. Let's look at the example of China. China's trade surplus is $295 billion. Their exports to the U.S. are $438 billion. If you divide that, you get 0.67. 67% is how the Americans calculated it. If you halve that and round it up, you get 34%, which is what Trump is now imposing on China. Economists are baffled by this calculation. They're calling it 6th grade maths. But some countries don't have to make these calculations, the likes of Iran, North Korea, and Russia, because Trump is not imposing tariffs on them. Iran, North Korea, and Russia, no tariffs. And that is highlight number 6. These countries are already under significant U.S. sanctions. Their tariff rates are also quite high. So the White House says additional tariffs are not necessary. Besides them, the tariffs are comprehensive, perhaps too comprehensive, which is our 7th highlight. Trump has even targeted remote islands like Heard Island and McDonnell Island. These are technically part of Australia, but Trump has imposed a separate 10% tariff on them. Guess how much this island exports? Nothing, because no one lives there. Trump will have to ask penguins to cough up the money. Another example is Norfolk Island. This is yet another Australian overseas territory. It has been slapped with 29% tariffs. That's actually 19 points more than the tariffs on Australia. And how many people live there? Just 2,000. Even Australia's Prime Minister is scratching his head.
Norfolk Island, interestingly, is I think 29%. I'm not sure what Norfolk Island major exports are to the United States and why it's been singled out, but it has.
Remember Lesotho? Trump claimed that nobody had heard of this country. Yet he is slapping them with 50% tariffs, 50, which makes you wonder, what is the logic here? Thankfully, certain goods are exempt from these tariffs, and that is highlight number 8. There will be no extra tariffs on pharmaceuticals, also on copper, semiconductors, gold, and energy. Basically, all things strategic, no tariffs on them. Next is highlight number 9. Yesterday's rollout had a lot of logistical errors. It did not live up to the liberation hype, and I'll tell you why. Trump's chart showed India's tariffs at 26%. But then the White House said it was 27%. A couple of other countries also had such discrepancies. Plus, look at Taiwan. It is listed under a table called countries, even though the U.S. does not recognize Taiwan's independence. If intentional, this is a bold statement, but chances are it's a mistake. And finally, the 10th highlight. How are markets reacting to Trump's Liberation Day? Not well. Japan's Nikkei lost almost 1,000 points today. It fell to an 8-month low. In India, the Sensex lost more than 320 points. In France, the CAC fell almost 240%. In Germany, the DAX fell more than 600 points. In Hong Kong, the Hang Seng dropped 350 plus points. And as expected, it is worse in America. The S&P 500 was down 225 points in opening trade, and Dow Jones almost 1,500 points down. Everywhere you look, stocks are in the red, and this is just the start. Once the retaliation comes, the bloodbath may worsen. I guess it's time to brush up on those tariff lessons.
India, very, very tough, very, very tough.
So Donald Trump's trade war is well and truly underway. He has spared no one this time, not even India. Some observers had different expectations. They believed that India would be left out because both sides are negotiating a trade agreement. India and the U.S., they've been talking about a trade deal. Trump himself said this a few days ago. So the hope was that he won't impose tariffs till those talks conclude. But that's not how it played out. Listen to this.
India, very, very tough, very, very tough. The Prime Minister just left, and he's a great friend of mine, but I said, you're a friend of mine, but you're not treating us right. They charge us 52%. You have to understand, we charge them almost nothing.
India is very tough, he said. He called Prime Minister Modi a great friend, but he imposed tariffs nonetheless. They will come into effect on the 9th of April. And what's the rate? 27%. Although Trump's chart, as we just told you, said 26%, the official order of the U.S. government says 27%, and that chart had many such discrepancies. But for the moment, we'll focus on India. What will be the impact of these tariffs on India? How much would it cost the Indian economy? $34 billion. That's the cost. That's almost 1% of India's GDP. $34 billion, 1% of India's GDP, 0.9% to be precise. And which industries and sectors will be hit? We have a list. Electronics worth $14 billion, gems and jewelry worth $9 billion, and automobiles and auto parts. They will be charged a different rate though. Trump has announced a blanket 25% tax on automobiles and auto parts. That's for all countries. So the same 25% rate would apply to India too. This is only for auto exports, 25% tariffs. And auto exports in India's case is not a substantial amount. India does not export a lot of finished automobiles to the US, but it does supply auto parts. And this export is worth $2.2 billion. So broadly, these are the industries that will be hit. Now let's talk about the ones that are safe. Pharmaceuticals, semiconductors and copper, steel and energy products. All these have been spared from the new Trump tariff regime. And what is India's response? The Commerce Ministry has issued a statement. It said New Delhi is, and I'm quoting, carefully examining the tariffs. It plans to take feedback from the industry. There is one line that stands out in the statement. Let me quote. The department is also studying the opportunities that may arise due to this new development. Now, the use of the word opportunities is interesting. How can India benefit from Trump's trade war? Is there a silver lining? Experts say there is. Look around the region. Other players have been slapped with far steeper tariffs, like China. Effectively, Chinese products will face 54% tariffs. That's the highest among all U.S. trade partners. Vietnam comes next with 46% tariffs overall. Then you have Bangladesh at 37%. For India, the tariff is 27%. It's still a blow, but it could have been worse. And this gap between India and its neighbors may work in India's favor, specifically in three high-value industries: textiles, electronics, and machinery. Experts say that Trump's tariffs can open new doors for India. One example they give is that of Taiwan. It's the world leader in semiconductor supply, but if the supply chains shift from Taiwan, and if India emerges as an alternative, if it replaces Taiwan even partially, it would be a boost for India's economy. All of these are big ifs. but there's a possibility. New Delhi can start with some low-hanging fruits, stuff like packaging, testing and low-end chip manufacturing. So that's one scenario, to harness the impending supply disruption. Similarly, India has opportunities in areas like machinery and toys. China currently dominates this space, but with tariffs as high as 54%, businesses will look elsewhere to make their goods, to cut costs and maintain their bottom line. So India is in a strong position, but to leverage this, India must reform. India must position itself to win new businesses. It must make structural reforms and offer compelling incentives to invite businesses. This includes building infrastructure and strengthening the logistics network. There's a lot of work to do. Trump's tariffs could push India towards making these changes. At the same time, India will have to manage Trump's unpredictability. Which brings us to the trade deal. The U.S. wants India to make sweeping concessions. It wants India to reduce tariffs across the board, from energy to defense and even agriculture. Now, if India agrees to American terms, it could still evade the tariffs. But the price for this would be steep. If you lower the barriers on American goods, Indian manufacturers could lose out. If tariffs on farm products are reduced, Indian farmers would protest. And this is tricky, both economically and politically. So New Delhi will have to strike a tough balance. Our next story is for the American consumer. You're in for pain. Prices will go up. Whatever you plan to buy, a pack of avocados, a can of beer, a new car, your bill will be higher than before, thanks to your president and his tariffs. Well, his logic is simple and skewed. He wants to cut the reliance on foreign goods, to bring jobs back to America and to make it great again.
April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy.
So tariffs have a patriotic packaging, and like most packaged stuff, there's more gas than substance, because tariffs will make imported goods costlier, and that extra money will come from American wallets. This is how it works. Say an American company buys beer from Mexico or car parts from Canada. Now they have tariffs. So this company will have to pay extra, and the company will not eat the cost. It will pass it on to the consumers, and things will get expensive. In fact, we have a list of what will be the worst hit. The first is houses. Housing is the biggest purchase for most American households. 94% of American houses are made of lumber. And the U.S. imports 1/3 of its lumber from Canada. Now, with tariffs in place, lumber prices will go up, and by extension, prices of houses will go up too. Second is cars. Trump has announced 25% auto tariffs on cars and car parts, and this came into effect today. Trump believes it will revive the U.S. auto industry.
But such horrendous imbalances have devastated our industrial base and put our national security at risk. I don't blame these other countries at all for this calamity. I blame former presidents and past leaders who weren't doing their job. They let it happen, and they let it happen to an extent that nobody can even believe.
But will it really? Will it help the U.S. auto industry? Cars are the second largest purchase for most Americans. In 2024, the U.S. imported around 8 million cars. That is around $240 billion in trade. It makes for nearly half of the sales. Most of these car makers rely heavily on international supply chains, mostly in North America. They produce vehicles in Mexico and Canada. Car parts are also manufactured there. So these new tariffs will affect all of it. We are talking about goods worth $460 billion. So car prices will certainly go up in the U.S., anywhere between $4,000 to $10,000 per vehicle. That is what economists estimate. Then we have fuel prices. America imports crude oil. More than 60% of it is from Canada. It is the largest foreign supplier of crude oil to the U.S. So tariffs could push up fuel prices too. The fourth product that will get expensive is alcohol. If you're a fan of Modelo or Corona, brace yourself. Mexican beer will cost more because of the new tariffs on beer and the aluminium cans that they come in. Same for bourbon, tequila, and Canadian whiskey. Long story short, your weekend drinks will burn a hole in your pocket. The fifth on this list is daily groceries like avocado and maple syrup. Nearly 90% of U.S. avocados come from Mexico, 90%. So your guacamole will get pricier. There's also maple syrup. Canada accounts for 75% of its global production. So if you want to save money, pancakes without syrup is your new normal. Now, Trump believes that these tariffs will boost American companies. They will produce everything domestically and people will buy that stuff. Great idea on paper. But here's the problem. U.S. manufacturers are not ready to meet the demand. It takes years to build supply chains from scratch. Until then, consumers pay the price. And this is just the beginning. Tariffs don't just stop at the grocery store or the gas pump. They ripple through the entire economy. Jobs get cut, businesses slow down, exports struggle. As prices climb, wages often do not keep up. All of this means inflation will rise, and that has raised fears of a recession.
We should be very concerned. The last time trade war on this scale has happened was in 1930s. Exactly in 1930, it was Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, and it led to a global recession worldwide. And if this trade war escalates, we could see a slowdown of the global economy on the scale of a global financial crisis of 2014 and possibly deeper. And this is the largest threat which would affect the whole world.
Yesterday, we told you about Goldman Sachs. It raised the possibility of a U.S. recession to 35%. And now Barclays has flagged it too. It says there's a high risk that the U.S. will enter recession. It is even driving bets on prediction markets. More than 50% are betting on the fact that America will slip into a recession. So the question is this short-term pain for long-term gain, or is it just pain all the way? Will it bring jobs back to the U.S., or will America end up paying the price literally? We'll be tracking this for you.
The tariffs deepen a trade war he kicked off on his return to the White House and reverses decades of trade liberalization that have shaped the global order. He used a poster to illustrate reciprocal tariffs.
They like me, I like them.
Including 34% on China and 20% on the European Union. Trading partners are expected to respond with countermeasures of their own that could lead to dramatically higher prices for everything.
Effective at midnight, we will impose a 25% tariff on all foreign-made automobiles.
Meanwhile, a separate set of tariffs on auto imports that Trump announced last week will take effect starting on April 3rd. Economists have warned that tariffs could slow the global economy, raise the risk of recession, and increase living costs for the average U.S. family by thousands of dollars.
April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed.
President Trump dropped a bomb today on the global economy. He announced 10% tariffs on all countries and special, much higher tariffs on specific countries. Stock markets are falling on this news, which came late in the afternoon after American markets closed. He's keeping a campaign promise. He talked about a 10%, what he called universal tariff on all imports. And he's hitting most countries with that, but he's also singled out about 60 other countries for specific, very high tariffs. For example, he's putting what he calls a reciprocal tariff of 34% on China. And that is meant to make up for the trade barriers that China imposes on the U.S. These tariffs are
They rip us off. It's so sad to see. It's so pathetic.
Europe has everything it needs to make it through the storm. We are in this together. If you take on one of us, you take on all of us.
Tariffs are like a heavyweight boxer's punch, blunt, messy, and capable of knocking out entire industries. Donald Trump is in the ring, dealing back-to-back blows. But not all opponents are hitting back immediately, even when he's calling them names. Listen to this.
European Union, they're very tough, very, very tough traders. You think of European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad to see. It's so pathetic. 39%, we're going to charge them 20%.
So Trump is imposing a 20% tariff on Europe, which came as a shock to them because Europe is one of America's biggest allies and trading partners. Look at the numbers. In 2023, the European Union exported goods worth over $500 billion to the U.S. In 2024, it was the largest single market for U.S. goods exports. So the tariffs felt like a stab in the back, especially from its closest ally.
I know that many of you feel let down by our oldest ally. Yes, we must brace for the impact that this will inevitably have. Europe has everything it needs to make it through the storm. We are in this together. If you take on one of us, you take on all of us. So we will stand together and stand up for each other. Our unity is our strength.
They shouldn't be too surprised, though. Last month, Trump imposed tariffs on EU steel and aluminium products. And Europe responded with countermeasures. They sanctioned American goods worth around $28 billion. So this one was a long time coming. Germany's car industry is sweating. Italian fashion houses are recalculating their losses. And French champagne makers, let's just say, there's not much popping out of bottles right now. But Europe says it is prepared for this. They are ready with so-called countermeasures. It's not clear what they are, but despite the frustration, Europe is trying to stay calm.
We have always been ready to negotiate with the United States to remove the remaining barriers to transatlantic trade. At the same time, we are prepared to respond. We are already finalizing the first package of countermeasures in response to tariffs on steel. And we're now preparing for further countermeasures to protect our interests and our businesses if negotiations fail.
Von der Leyen's message was mirrored in EU capitals. Germany called for negotiations. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni called the tariffs wrong, but she's pushing for a deal. France called the levies a catastrophe. Spain is unveiling plans to protect its economy, so the response is mixed. But the sentiment is the same. Europe knows that it has options, but it's also wary of escalating things too quickly.
The U.S. administration has decided to attack this link unilaterally, and I would like to stress this by deploying, as you know, an absolutely unprecedented tariff package of 25% for our cars and 20% for practically all products imported from the European Union. In short, it is a return to 19th century protectionism.
The U.S. government is therefore treading a path that will only end up with losers. The European Union has the strongest single internal market in the world with 450 million consumers, and that gives us strength. We are available for talks with the U.S. government to avert a trade war, and the President of the Commission has already made this clear. Germany and Europe continue to stand for free trade.
So what's the game plan? Well, for starters, Europe is considering some strategic countermeasures, and if there's one target they've got, it is big tech. Your Apple, Meta, Amazon, X. They've had a pretty smooth ride in Europe, especially when it comes to taxes. They often route profits through low-tax countries.
The big tech companies have an incredible dominance in Europe and are largely exempt from European taxes, so they benefit from it, and we do too, of course. The consumers and companies that use these companies simply take advantage of the offers that are available.
Well, that could change very soon. France has already hinted at a digital tax. Germany says it is on the table. So U.S. big tech may be caught in the crosshairs of this trade war. Another option is restricting U.S. companies from bidding on European government contracts or even limiting their intellectual property rights. That could put a dent in U.S. firms looking to expand. French President Emmanuel Macron is pushing for this. He also wants European companies to pause investments in the U.S. But remember, all of these are only options at the moment, options that Europe does not want to exercise because it does not want to turn this into a full-blown trade war. They're still hoping for a deal.
The Americans are being given 14 days to enter into talks, and that's a smart move. Europe, we shouldn't be the hotheads, we shouldn't be the first to start the fire, but we should always try to extinguish the fire. The goal should be to de-escalate and avoid a tariff war, a tariff dispute.
Across the channel, the UK situation is a little different. Their tariffs aren't as severe as Europe. It's only 10% for the UK, so there is some relief. But London is not too thrilled about it. Negotiations are currently underway for a trade deal, and the hope is to soften the blow. The Brits say they are ready to hop on a plane to Washington if a deal seems within reach.
Let me be clear with the House. A trade war is in nobody's interests. And the country deserves, and we will take, a calm, pragmatic approach. That's why constructive talks are progressing to agree a wider economic prosperity deal with the US. That's why we're working with all industries and sectors likely to be impacted.
Well, here's the thing. Tariffs do not just affect governments and corporations, they hit regular people too. For the West, inflation is already a headache. And these new tariffs are not helping. So what happens now? The next few weeks will be crucial. Trade officials are meeting in Brussels and London to map out their next steps. Businesses are doing their best. They're behind the scenes lobbying, hoping to protect their industries without making things worse. Because this is not just about tariffs, it's also about leverage. It's about who blinks first. As Trump throws his punches, the West is figuring out exactly how to counter him without getting knocked down. So American allies want to take the middle ground. They want to talk to Trump. China, on the other hand, wants to hit back. China has vowed to retaliate. It has called Trump's tariffs bullying.
China has repeatedly stressed that there are no winners in trade wars and tariff wars, and protectionism is not a way out. The unilateral tariff hikes by the U.S. violate WTO rules, harm the common interests of people of all countries, and do not help solve the problems of the U.S. itself. It is clear to everyone that more and more countries are opposing the U.S.'s unilateral bullying actions, such as imposing tariffs.
Out of the entire lot, China faces the highest tariffs, a whopping 65%, that is if you add up yesterday's reciprocal tariffs and all the previous duties that Trump announced earlier. The total comes to some 65%. It's an all-out attack on Chinese exports. This is how Trump justified it.
So, if you look at that, China, first row, China, 67%. That's tariffs charged to the USA, including currency manipulation and trade barriers. I think, in other words, they charge us, we charge them less. So how can anybody be upset? They will be, because we never charge anybody anything, but now we're going to charge.
Trump's tariffs could cripple China. The impact is already showing. Experts are assessing the potential damage to China's economy, and they paint a bleak picture. They say China's growth is all set to fall. It may fall by over 2 percentage points. China's currency, the yuan, is weakening. It has hit a 7-week low after Trump's announcement. Chinese stocks have also slumped. The markets, both in Hong Kong and mainland China, ended the day's trade in red. There could be more pain in the coming days. So can China avoid it? There are two factors to consider here. First is the state of China's economy. After years of decline, Beijing was hoping for a recovery this year. It had set a target of 5% growth. And the US market was key to achieving this target because it is their biggest market. Every year, China sends goods worth nearly $500 billion to the US. This is over 16% of China's total exports. It goes to the US, $500 billion. The new tariffs strike at the very heart of this business. If the tariffs stay, Chinese goods will become quite expensive in the US. Their demand is expected to fall, and so China's revenue from the US would fall. Credit ratings agencies are already worried about China's finances. Today, Fitch downgraded China's credit rating from A+ to A. Fitch has highlighted two problems. The first is weak finances of China's governments, both at the central and local level. Their finances are a mess. Their debt levels are very high and rising. And this is a major concern. Now, US exports could have helped mitigate it. But with these tariffs, China risks losing access to the entire American market, and that too for a broad range of products. So that is the first factor, government finances. The second factor is the state of US-China relations. Trump has named his price to lower tariffs. He wants more market access in China and almost zero import taxes on US goods. So just like others, China too will have to negotiate a deal. But unlike others, this is going to be a tough conversation for Beijing. It's going to be much harder for them to strike a deal with Trump. The talks could take months. And remember, China faces the highest tariffs in Trump's plan. He will not scale back easily. He is also not on the best of terms with Chinese President Xi Jinping. So this is not going to be easy, whenever they start a conversation, that is. As for the tariffs, they will come into effect in less than a week. Beijing is trying hard to soften the blow. President Xi Jinping is making moves on various fronts. A few days back, he met with top CEOs from across the world, at least 40 of them, and the Chinese president tried to win them over. He promised them stable policies. In the same breath, he also attacked the United States.
We must jointly maintain an open and cooperative international environment. Some countries have engaged in small-scale activities, high walls and tariff barriers, politicized economic and trade issues, instrumentalized and weaponized them, and forced companies to take sides and make choices that violate economic laws and are not in line with market rules and the general trend of opening up.
That statement now sounds outdated because Trump has set the US and China on a collision course. A deal is a long shot. Beijing has warned that it will strike back. It has made no announcement so far. But we know that China does not have the luxury to wait this out. This is a situation that will not fix itself. Xi Jinping is up against his toughest challenge yet.
Liberation Day, waiting for a long time. Those with good eyes, with bad eyes. Baseline tariff of 10%.
Human beings have traded for centuries, first from village to village, then kingdom to kingdom, and recently country to country. After the Cold War, trade became an engine of growth. I have some numbers for you. In 1989, trade made up just 38% of global GDP. By 2008, it was up to 61%. Most countries embraced this new reality, where trade was key to growth. And not just any trade, free-flowing multilateral trade. The world has invested a lot in this idea. We built a specialized agency called the WTO, the World Trade Organization. We created laws for freedom of navigation. We ran campaigns to reduce barriers. But yesterday, US President Donald Trump took a chainsaw to that order. He ripped up the global trading system. The question is, can it survive this onslaught? Well, it has to. Tariff or not, no country is 100% self-reliant. They have to buy things from abroad. So multilateral trade is not going to die, but its present form could change. Let's look at the World Trade Organization. This agency was created with very specific goals in 1995. Create rules for world trade, push for reducing barriers, and provide a platform to resolve differences. This was what the WTO was supposed to do. Trump could have taken his tariff complaints to the WTO, but he's not a big fan of this organization, or any UN organization for that matter. He's already cut funding to the agency, the WTO. Plus, his allies say that the WTO has been hijacked by China, which is true to some extent. So what did Trump do? He decided to settle the issue outside the WTO with reciprocal tariffs. A lot of countries say that his tariffs violate the WTO rules. So they plan to sue Donald Trump at the World Trade Organization. We say good luck to them. WTO litigations often take years to complete, and Trump is blocking the appointment of a WTO judge, so the agency is deadlocked anyway. Nonetheless, it's a story in itself. It's true that developing countries charge higher tariffs, but in most cases, these are WTO compliant, meaning those tariffs are accepted under established trade rules. But Trump's tariffs are not. They are a direct attack on these established rules. If this continues, can the WTO survive? The agency's chief is confident. Let me quote from what she said. Members are saying to me, yes, we are concerned, but at the same time, we are using the system and we want to continue using it. I'm telling you that the bedrock of trade is here and it's not going anywhere. Confidence is good, but the ground reality is different. Faith in the trading system has eroded. The West feels that China has been given a free ride. Even here in India, the WTO is not all that popular. Recently, Indian farmers asked the government to leave the WTO. And this is a big problem because the success of any multilateral agency is based on trust. All parties should trust the agency. If not, it cannot succeed. Recent political tensions have also contributed to this. Just look at America and China. As their rivalry heated up, we saw both sides using trade barriers. They imposed tariffs and import quotas. These were not based on free trade principles. These were based on politics. As a result, global trade has suffered. In fact, let me go back to those numbers that I gave you. In 1989, trade made up 38% of the global GDP. By 2008, it went up to 61%. But in 2023, it came down to 58%. So the takeaway is pretty clear. Global trade is losing momentum. It is happening. It was happening even before Donald Trump's election. He's simply speeding things up. If these trends are here to stay, what does the future look like? A lot of countries are looking at bilateral options, including India. A top Niti Aayog official pushed for this. He says, take care of issues with bilateral trade deals. You can't always depend on the WTO. And that makes a lot of sense with Trump. But it does raise questions. For example, let's say India cuts tariffs on American EVs. Wouldn't European EV makers demand the same? And Japanese and Korean ones? A multilateral trading order avoided this confusion, but now every government will have to deal with it. And all of this makes the future of global trade uncertain. We could be looking at a period of disruption in the form of tariffs, in the form of militarized shipping lanes, and in the form of sanctions. It's proof that all agencies and systems must reform continuously. If not, they will be swept aside by time. China's drills around Taiwan have ended, and Beijing has achieved two things: cheap propaganda and a bad reputation. But they've also pushed Donald Trump to commit more to the region. He has approved a major weapons deal for the Philippines. Manila will get 20 F-16 fighter jets, and this is a major boost for their security needs. This deal is worth $5.5 billion. The jets will come with long-range air-to-air missiles and guided bombs. And the timing is significant. Last week, Taiwan received a new batch of F-16 jets. and now it is the Philippines. Fun fact, the Philippines has not had a frontline jet since 2005. They will now get 20, and they want more. That is bad news for China. Their aggressive drills are only pushing the region towards the United States. Our next report has more.
Donald Trump has returned to the White House with a mission: contain China. And it involves Uncle Sam's closest ally in the Indo-Pacific, the Philippines. The Trump administration is drastically recommitting to the region. Why do we say this? Because of some latest developments. The Trump administration has approved a major weapons deal for the Philippines. The country will now get 20 F-16 fighter jets. But these aren't just any F-16s. These will be the F-16 Block 70 and 72, the most advanced and lethal version of the aircraft yet. These will be equipped with modern radars, advanced targeting pods, long-range air-to-air missiles and guided bombs. The deal is worth over $5.5 billion, and the deal includes a large weapons package. The Philippine Air Force will receive over 100 air-to-air missiles, including the long-range AMRAAM. The jets will also come with around 100 guided bombs, including the 2,000-pound Mk-84 bunker buster bombs. This is a major boost for Manila's security needs, and China is fuming.
Any defense and security cooperation between the Philippines and other countries should not target third parties, harm third-party interests, threaten regional peace and security, or exacerbate regional tensions.
The Philippines has long trusted the U.S. for its weapons. Manila is the largest recipient of American military assistance in the Indo-Pacific. Some major platforms include the Typhoon missile system, a land-based weapon that fires Tomahawk missiles against maritime threats. Then, most of the air logistics fleet of the Philippines is American. This includes the C-130 Super Hercules cargo planes and the UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters. The Philippines also buys infantry fighting vehicles and small arms like rifles and mortars from the United States. And now, they will get modern lethal F-16 fighter jets. But the timing of this deal is important. The Philippines is buying a frontline fighter aircraft for the first time since 2005. The reason? China. China has increased its aggressive behavior in the region. Beijing recently concluded drills around Taiwan. Meanwhile, Chinese boats often violate maritime boundaries of the Philippines.
गेट हमारा है, गेटवे ऑफ इंडिया हमारा है, और चर्च नहीं सही फिर भी चर्च गेट हमारा है, तो फिर ये केवल किसी एक के दिमाग में क्यों आती है? हमने जो इवैक्यू एक्ट के तहत दे दिया था पाकिस्तान के गए लोगों को, क्या हमारे जो सिख और हिंदू भाई आए थे उनकी जमीनें मिली? अरे महाराजा रणजीत सिंह की राजधानी लाहौर थी और काबुल तक था राज, तो क्या उन्होंने जमीनें नहीं दान दी होगी गुरुद्वारे और मंदिरों को? वो मिली? अरे वो तो छोड़िए, ननकाना साहब और करतारपुर साहब तक नहीं मिला था। इससे दिखाई पड़ता है कि कितनी एक तरफा हम लोगों ने कोई निगोशिएट ही नहीं किया और उसे करने की बात कही थी। इसलिए मैं कह सकता हूं सर, कि अब हमारी सरकार ने जो संशोधन किए हैं, अब ये मजहबी हुकूमत के फरमान से नहीं, बाबा साहब अम्बेडकर के संविधान से चलने वाला है। अब मैं अंत में उस विषय के ऊपर आता हूं, जिसे सांप्रदायिक राजनीति बनाम सेकुलर राजनीति इसके ऊपर कहा जाता है। सभापति महोदय, मैं बताना चाहता हूं कि जब आजादी मिली उसके बाद क्या किसी ने डिमांड किया था कि हमें वक्फ बोर्ड चाहिए? नहीं किया था। फिर क्यों 54 में दिया गया? किसी मुस्लिम ने डिमांड किया क्या कि मदरसे चाहिए? फिर क्यों दिया गया? मुस्लिम समाज तो राष्ट्र की मुख्य धारा में आने को तैयार था, इसीलिए यूसुफ खान, दिलीप कुमार के नाम से आने में उन्हें कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं थी। महजबीन बानो को मीना कुमारी के रूप में आने में प्रॉब्लम नहीं थी। मुमताज बेगम को मधुबाला बन के आने में प्रॉब्लम नहीं थी। हामिद अली को अजीत के रूप में आने प्रॉब्लम नहीं थी। मगर, और मैं यह भी बताना चाहता हूं, मुस्लिम समाज में बहुत बड़ा तबका उस समय इस बात को सोच रहा था, और अभी कपिल सिब्बल साहब बोले, ये उस चीज के वकील रहे, इन्हें पता होना चाहिए, पता होगा कि सुन्नी सेंट्रल वक्फ बोर्ड राम मंदिर में 1961 में मुद्दई बना है, 12 साल के बाद, क्योंकि के मोहम्मद ने लिखा है कि एक बहुत बड़ा तबका था जो ये मानता था कि हमें इस चक्कर में नहीं पड़ना चाहिए। मगर अफसोस कि वही लेफ्टिस्टों सेकुलरिस्टों ने उनको समझा समझाकर इस मुकाम तक लाकर खड़ा कर लिया। अब यहां मैं एक और बात कहना चाहूं, खैर छोड़िए उन सरकारों ने बाद में क्या दिया, मगर उसके बाद सुनिए, इंदिरा जी के जमाने में मुस्लिम पर्सनल लॉ बोर्ड आया, तो राजीव जी के जमाने में शाहबानो केस आया, तो नरसिम्हा राव के जमाने में 95 का एक्ट आया, तो मनमोहन सिंह जी के जमाने में 2013 का एक्ट आया, मगर इलाज नहीं निकला। तो इसे एक शेर में कहूंगा कि मरीजे सेकुलर इश्क पर लानत खुदा की, मर्ज बढ़ता गया जो जो दवा की। अब मैं सभापति महोदय एक और बात कहना चाहता हूं, शुरू के 20-25 साल में मुस्लिम समाज के बारे में मैं कहना चाहता हूं। आज जब आजादी मिली तो मुस्लिम समाज के प्रतीक कौन थे? उस्ताद बिस्मिल्लाह खां, उस्ताद फरीदुद्दीन डागर, उस्ताद बड़े गुलाम अली, उस्ताद जाकिर हुसैन जिनकी अभी कुछ दिन पहले डेथ हुई, बड़े बड़े नगमा निवार, हसरत जयपुरी, मजरूर सुल्तानपुरी, साहिर लुधियानवी, कैफी आजमी, जोश मलियाबादी, जिगर मुरादाबादी। अब सर क्या हो गया? तब मुस्लिम समाज इन अदब के शाहकारों के साथ जोड़ा जाता था। आज मुस्लिम समाज का नेतृत्व किन लोगों के साथ जोड़ता है? इशरत जहां, याकूब मेनन, मुख्तार अंसारी, अतीक अहमद, दाऊद इब्राहिम, कौन जोड़ रहा है ये? तब से सर, जब से ये सेकुलर हो गया देश 1976 से और सेकुलर सियासत शुरू हुई, उसने ले जाकर इनको इस मुकाम तक पहुंचाया। और इस वक्फ बोर्ड के बिल में भी जो बात कही जा रही है, सर मुस्लिम समाज को यह समझाया गया कि तुम्हें बीजेपी वालों को तुमसे बड़ी अदावत है, और कहा गया इनको बड़ी मोहब्बत है। जब यह देश आजाद हुआ, मैं उत्तर प्रदेश का रहने वाला हूं, उत्तर प्रदेश में 1931 की सेंसस में 8% रेट ऑफ डेथ थी और सैयद मुसलमानों में 24% थी। यूपी की ब्यूरोक्रेसी में 20% थे। आज कहां चले गए सब? मैं एक लाइन में कहना चाहूंगा, ये अदावत और मोहब्बत की सियासत में ऐसे फंसे कि किसी को किसी की मोहब्बत ने मारा, किसी को किसी की अदावत ने मारा, मगर इस शराफत अली को सेकुलर सियासत ने मारा। और मैं सभापति महोदय एक और बात कहना चाहता हूं कि चलिए बोलिए।
फौजिया खां, प्लीज प्लीज वन सेकेंड, माइक इज देयर। यस,
ये बोल रहे हैं मुस्लिम समाज आज का इशरत जहां और फलाना टेररिस्ट के साथ नाम जोड़ रहे हैं। ये बिल्कुल आरोप है सर, इसको एक्सपंज करना चाहिए। ये समाज के साथ अन्याय है, ये बात आपको एक्सपंज करना होगा सर, ये बात को।
एक ऑनरेबल मेंबर, if you would carefully go through what Sudhanshu has said, I am sure you will appreciate his spirit. Just think for a moment. He has not cast any aspersions. Sudhanshu, go ahead.
टाइम में जवाब दूंगा और उसके बाद ये हमारा सदन माने ना माने जो देख रहे होंगे उनके लिए कहना चाहता हूं, सर डॉक्टर APJ अब्दुल कलाम।
One second.
काहे परेशान?
वाइको जी, ऑनरेबल मेंबर, वाइको जी, ओ माय गॉड, वाइको जी, ऑनरेबल एचएम
को जी हिंदी समझ रहे हैं।
One second. फौजिया खान, one second. First, I think. One second.
सर क्या? Sir, it cannot be stigmatized.
Yes, sir.
An entire community cannot be branded like this.
Fauziya Khan ji, I'll come to you. I'll give you the opportunity. Honorable Finance Minister.
But one line is said. One line. Please. He might be very emotional, sir, but that one line he said is objectionable, and I will seek your indulgence.